Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. So, as we know, we were scheduled to have a teleconference or telelink via live video feed with Ustad Shaykh Hassan al-Somali. Something came up on his end, an emergency that he had to deal with, so therefore he had to reschedule with us. And alhamdulillah, some good news though. Someone donated a monitor just as we have on the men's side, a little better one actually for the women's side. So we're going to mount that inshallah ta'ala and put that up over there. So when we do reschedule, the sisters will be able to have see the same thing that we're seeing at the same time that we're seeing it, inshallah ta'ala. So it'll be added to the sister side wall soon, inshallah ta'ala. Probably tonight. I think the brothers plan to do it tonight after everybody clears out. At any rate, we want to take some benefits still. We're going to take some. They say this mic is kind of low. They say this mic is low. We're going to take some benefits still from this book that we normally read, Hayatuna al-Usriya Bain al-Waqi' wal-Ma'mur, Our Family Life Between the Reality and What is Hoped For, by Shaykh Muhammad Ghalib, Hafidhahullah wa Ra'ah, from the scholars of the UAE. And we finished off in the last sitting discussing some mashakil and some problems that may occur, the causes of those problems and the means to remedy them between the two spouses. And so now we're going to discuss the huquq of the abna, or the rights of the children, the rights of the children for Islam. The Shaykh, he mentioned min ni'am Allah azza wa jal alati wahabaha lil ibad ni'matul abna, that from the blessings of Allah Ta'ala which He has provided His servants with is the blessing of children. كما في قوله عز وجل لله ملك السماوات والأرض يخلق ما يشاء. To Allah belongs what is in the heavens and what is within the earth, meaning the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and He creates whatever He wills. يهب لمن يشاء إناثا ويهب لمن يشاء الذكورا. That Allah provides, He bestows upon whomever He wills daughters, and He bestows sons upon whomever He wills. أو يزوجهم ذكرانا وإناثا, or He pairs them up and gives some people both males and females, meaning children. ويجعل من يشاء عقيما, and He makes whomever He wills to be barren, and thus they don't have children. إنه عليم قدير. Indeed, Allah Ta'ala is all-knowing, and He is all-capable, all-powerful. The Shaykh says, فَهَذَا فَضْلٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ وَمِنَّتِهِ. This is a blessing and a fadl from Allah Ta'ala and a favor that He confers upon whomever He wills. أَن يَرْزَقَ مَن يَشَاء بِالذُّكُورِ وَبِالْإِنَاثِ, that He bestows who He wants with, or He bestows upon whomever He wills daughters, and He bestows sons upon whomever He wills. أو بالذكور والإناث, or He gives some both males and females. أو يجعل غيره عقيما, or He makes other than them to be aqim, meaning barren, having no children. وما يقضي بذلك سبحانه وتعالى إلا لحكمة وهو يعلمها. And this is not brought about except due to a wisdom which Allah Ta'ala knows, meaning why He gives some whatever He may give them, and others you may find them going their entire lives striving to have children, but it is never decreed for them. While some, they don't want that many children, but Allah Ta'ala decrees that they have an abundance. Some may want sons, but they get daughters. Some want daughters, but they get sons, and so on and so forth. This is due to a wisdom from Allah Ta'ala that He Himself knows. The Shaykh, he says, وَمِمَّا يَدُلُ عَلَىٰ عِظَمْ هَذِهِ النِّعْمَةِ أَنَّهَا كَانَتْ مَطْلُبْ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ عَلَيْهِمُ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. He says, and what indicates that the enormity of this blessing, meaning the blessing of children, what indicates that it is a blessing, and the enormity of that blessing is the fact that the prophets themselves sought it out. The prophets themselves, it was something which they desired. They desired children for themselves. Now, and so he says, as Allah Ta'ala said concerning Zakaria alayhi salam, وَزَكَرِيَّا إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ رَبِّي لَا تَذُرْنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. O my Lord, as Zakaria, he said, or when he called out to his Lord, saying, my Lord, don't leave me alone. Don't leave me to be alone. Meaning alone, having no children. Now, and you are the best of those who inherit. Meaning that it's not that I don't suffice myself with you, O Allah, because you are the best of those to inherit whatever that I have. Meaning, if I don't have children, it is known that Allah Ta'ala will inherit whatever I have. As the prophets, they leave behind no inheritance. So even if I don't have children, you are the best of those to inherit. However, don't leave me like this, not having any children whatsoever. He said that, وَقَالَ عَزَّ وَجَلْ عَنْهُ كَذَلِكَ. Likewise, Allah said concerning Zakaria, that he said, وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ الْمَوَالِيَ مِنْ وَرَائِي وَكَانَتْ امْرَأَتِي عَاقِرًا فَهَبْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا. He says, indeed, I am afraid for that which I am leaving behind. I am afraid for that which I am leaving behind. He says that, and my wife, she is aqir, yani she is barren. She's older and she is barren, meaning it's not likely that she's going to have children. So therefore, provide for me from yourself a wali, a guardian meaning a wali, someone to inherit from me. He says, yarithuni wa yarithu min ali Yaqub, that can inherit from me and inherit from the family of Yaqub. Mind you, we just said that the prophets don't leave behind any inheritance, right? So what is the inheritance that he's speaking about? The inheritance of knowledge. The inheritance of knowledge. As the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, he mentions that the ulama are the waratha, the anbiya. The scholars, they are the inheritors of the prophets. Why? Because the prophets don't leave behind any dinars nor any dirhams. But rather what they leave is religious knowledge. What they leave is ilm. So he wanted somebody to impart that knowledge upon. He wanted offspring that he can teach the affairs of knowledge to. They can inherit from me and inherit from the family of Yaqub, meaning that prophethood. That prophethood it can perpetuate and carry on. Because the prophets of old, it was known that they would be prophets, their children would be prophets after them. Yaqub was a prophet, Yusuf was a prophet. And it would carry on in this manner. And so he says that, Naam. وَمَعَ كَوْنِهِمْ نِعْمَةً عَظِيمًا فَهُمْ كَذَلِكَ مَسْئُولِيَّةً كَبِيرًا وَأَمَانَةً ثَقِيلًا. That in addition to the fact of them being a tremendous blessing, in addition to children being a tremendous blessing, they are as well a tremendous responsibility. And they are a trust from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that is weighty and heavy. He says, أمر الله تبارك وتعالى عباده أن يتخذوا من الأسباب ما فيه نجاة وبقاية لهم من العذاب. And Allah Ta'ala has commanded His servants to take the means which will contain within that najah, safety and security for your children, and a protection for them from the hellfire. As Allah Ta'ala has said within His book, يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. He said, O you who believe, protect yourselves, save yourselves first and foremost, and your families from a fire, the fuel of which is rocks and people. The fuel of that fire is rocks and people. He says, and upon that fire are angels that are stern and severe, who don't disobey Allah Ta'ala and what He has commanded them with, and they do what they have been commanded. قال بعض المفسرين يدخل الأولاد في قوله عز وجل قوا أنفسكم. That some of the scholars of tafsir say that the children enter into the command to save yourselves and your families. You have to save them. Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said that saving them here means adibuhum wa allimuhum, that you discipline them, you cultivate them and you teach them. You cultivate your family and you teach your family. This is how you save them, by way of religious knowledge. by imparting upon them religious knowledge. He says, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْوَاجِبِ عَلَى الْوَالِدَيْنِ أَنْ يَسْعِيَا فِي وَقَايَةِ الْأَبْنَاءِ مِنْ أَسْبَابِ الدُّخُولِ إِلَى النَّارِ. He says, and from that which is obligatory upon the two parents is that they strive earnestly in protecting their children from the means of entrance into the hellfire. وَهَذَا وَاجِبٌ عَظِيمٌ عَلَيْهِمَا. And this obligation is a tremendous obligation upon them. وَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مِنْ حَدِيثِ ابْنِ عُمَرَ. And due to this, the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the well-known hadith of Ibn Umar, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ, that every one of you is a shepherd. وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And everyone will be asked and questioned about his flock. You will be mas'ul, you're responsible. You're going to be questioned and asked about how you took care of that responsibility. What did you do with that responsibility? For imamu ra'in. Now he mentions examples of this ra'iyah, of this responsibility, of this flock that you are responsible for. Different angles and different perspectives of it. That the imam here, bears the meaning of the ruler, of the Muslim ruler. Now, he is a ra'i, he is responsible. He is a shepherd. وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And he's going to be asked about that which he governs. He's going to be asked about that which he governs. فَالرَّجُلُ فِي أَهْلِهِ رَاعٍ. And the man as well amongst his family. When it comes to his family, he is a shepherd. وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And he's going to be questioned and asked about what he is responsible for. He says, وَالْمَرْأَةُ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا رَاعِيَةٌ. And the woman in the house of her husband. Again, showing you what the asl is. The asl is that the house is the man's home. It is the man's home. But she is a ra'iyah over her husband's home. Not her home, over her husband's home. He says that, she is a ra'iyah over the house of her husband. وَهِيَ مَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهَا. And she's going to be asked about her responsibility, her flock. And then he went on to repeat, وَكُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. That all of you are shepherds and all of you are going to be asked about your flock. He said, and every responsibility has huquq and dawabit. Every responsibility that we have, whether it is responsibility of leadership, responsibility of our families, our children, responsibilities of our spouses and the likes of this, every responsibility has rights and it has dawabit, it has guidelines on how we are to discharge that responsibility. فَكَمَا أَنَّ الْإِسْلَامِ لَمْ يَتْرُكْ أَحَدًا إِلَّا وَجَاءَ بِبَيَانِ حُقُوقِهِ. And likewise, Islam, it has not left anything, it has not left anyone, any individual, except that it has clarified what the rights of the individual is. Allah Ta'ala has clarified for us within His Sharia what are the rights of the elders, for example. What are the rights of the husband, the rights of the wife? What are the rights of the neighbor? What are the rights of this one or that one? The leaders and so on and so forth. The ulama, the students of knowledge. What are the rights of the juhal, of the ignorant? They even have rights over us. Islam has clarified all of this. He said, so the rights of the wife, rights of the husband, rights of the neighbor, the relative, likewise the wali al-amr, the rights of the leader. Similarly, Islam has not left the rights of the children except that it has clarified the rights of the children and it has set this affair in order, the rights which they have over those who are responsible for them. وَهَذِهِ الْحُقُوقِ مُجْمَلَةٌ تَأْتِي عَلَىٰ ضَرْبَيْنِ. And these rights, generally speaking, they are from two angles or two perspectives. You have firstly, حُقُوقِ الْأَبْنَاءِ قَبْلَ الْوِلَادَةِ. The children have rights before they're even born. Before they're even born, they have rights over you. Your unborn children have rights over you. And the second angle are the rights that they have on us ba'da al-wilada, after they've been born. After they have been born. وأما تفصيل هذه الحقوق فهي كالآتي. As for the details of these rights, they are as follows. And we're going to take the first janib, inshallah ta'ala, that is the right of the children before birth, and we'll save their rights after birth for the next class, inshallah ta'ala. He said that, firstly, the huquq of the abna qabla al-wilada, the rights that the children have before their birth. The first right, he says, is hirs al-rajul wal-mar'a ala istiqama ala deen Allah ta'ala, is that the husband and the wife themselves must have istiqama upon their religion. You yourself, the best thing that you can do as a parent for your child is to be righteous yourself. And from the examples of the goodly results of this is we know what took place in the story of Musa and Khidr. In the story of Musa and Khidr, how the wall that was about to collapse, it was on the brink of falling down, and Khidr and Musa, they rebuilt the wall, they fixed the wall and built it back up. Musa didn't understand why Khidr had done this. What was Khidr's explanation? Who knows? Good. So our brother Ghazi, he mentioned that there were some kids, some orphans, whose father had left a treasure for his children underneath this wall. And the treasure was on the brink of being exposed, right? So Musa and Khidr built the wall back up so that they can gain their full strength and inherit their inheritance from their father. But it was mentioned in there, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمْ صَالِحًا, that their father was a righteous man. Their father was a righteous man. And as a result of the righteousness of the father, Allah Ta'ala, look how Allah Ta'ala protected the children on the account of the righteousness of the father. And he sent one of the 5 messengers of strong will, one of the best messengers that ever walked the face of the earth, to help in the reconstruction and the protection of the treasure of his children. So one of the best things that we can do for our child, as Shaykh Uthaymeen mentions that he draws a benefit from this, one of the best things we can do for our child is to be righteous yourself. Have taqwa of Allah Ta'ala yourself. Be upright upon the religion of Allah Ta'ala. And the goodly benefit of that will trickle down to your children. So it's the first thing which the Shaykh mentions. He says, فَلَا بُدْ مِنَ الْإِسْتِقَامَةِ, so it is a must that we have istiqama for the two parents, ala amr ad-deen, upon the affairs of the religion. فَيَحْرِصَانِ عَلَى مَعْرِفَةِ الدِّينِ, so they are diligent upon first and foremost learning their religion, knowing what your religion is, learning, the ahkam and the rulings of the religion, وَعِنَايَةً بِالْعِبَادَاتِ, being diligent upon acts of worship, وَالْقِيَامِ بِالطَّاعَاتِ, and establishing acts of obedience, وَتَعَلَّمْ كُلْ مَا يُقَرِّبُهُمَا إِلَى اللَّهِ, and learning that which will bring the two parents nearer to Allah Ta'ala, so that you can enact that. You don't just learn it to say that you know it. Rather, you learn it for application. You learn it for the purpose of application. He says that, نعم, فإن ذلك كله مما لا شك يمهد للتربية جيل صالح من الأبناء, because doing all of this, you seeking knowledge, you learning your religion, you striving to be upright, you being upon the obedience of Allah Ta'ala, this will be a tamheed. It will be a precursor to something good to follow. It'll be a tamheed to something good to follow. And what's good is going to follow that is the good cultivation of righteous generations after you. You are upright, so therefore you teach that uprightness to your children, and they teach it to their children, and so on and so forth. He says that, نعم واستقامتهم, and likewise it will be a precursor to them being upright. وحسن رعايتهم, and them being taken care of in the best way. ولذلك جاءت النصوص والآثار التي تهث وتدل على أهمية اختيار أصحاب الدين والصلاة عند الزوج وعند الزواج ومن تلكم النصوص. He says that, نعم, and due to this, many texts and narrations have come encouraging and indicating the importance of choosing people who are upright upon their religion to be your companions. Right? Ar-rajulu ala dini khalili. Al-mar'u ala dini khalil. The man is upon the deen of his khalil. Khalil here don't just mean your homeboy, your friend. It can mean your spouse as well. A person is upon the deen of their spouse. So therefore look to the one who you take as your spouse. A man is upon the deen of his friend, his companion. So look to who you take as companions. The woman likewise upon the deen of her companions. So look to who you take as your companions. So we look to the righteousness of our spouses or our companions before we take them as spouses or companions. He says that, from the text that indicate this is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that which is attributed to the Prophet alaihi wasallam, and which he said, "Takhayyaru li nutafikum, fankihu al-akfa wa ankihu ilayhim." He said, choose the right person for your sperm. He says, and marry the akfa. Marry those who are compatible with you. Marry those who are compatible with you. He says, wa ankihu ilayhim. And likewise, when it comes to marry your daughter off, marry her to someone who's compatible with her. Someone who's compatible with her. We don't want two people who are not compatible. They're not compatible because they come from two different walks of life, and sometimes these situations can work out. But if the two people are from similar backgrounds, then the chances of their marriage working out is better than two people are from two totally different backgrounds. They can't relate to each other at all. Okay? And so he says, marry those who are compatible with you, and likewise, when it comes time to marry off, then marry them off to people who are compatible with them. Now, he likewise said, tunkahu al-mar'atu li arba', that the woman is married for four. The woman is married for four. Limaliha, for her money. Walihasabiha, likewise for her lineage. Wa jamaliha, for her beauty. Walidiniha, and likewise for her deen, for her religion. He said, Fadfar bidat din taribat yadak. He said, but choose the woman of deen. Choose the woman of deen, and your hands, or let your hands be dusted. And this phrase, let your hands be dusted, it means that, the ulama say it means different things actually, but the correct meaning, and Allah Ta'ala knows best from what the ulama say, it means you can just put your hands in the dirt and not have to worry about nothing. You can put your hands down. As long as you have somebody who's religious, you don't have to worry about nothing at all. You're going to be successful. You're going to be okay. Now, he said that. And so the maqsood from his statement is that the people in the issue of ziwaj and marriage, yaqsudun al-mar'a, they typically choose women for these four reasons. These are amongst the four reasons why women are chosen. And more specifically than this, then I heard one of the people of knowledge mention in Medina some years ago how the Arabs in the pre-Islamic days of ignorance, the people generally speaking in the pre-Islamic days of ignorance, the Jews, they would marry a woman for her money. And the Christians, they sought out beauty alone. All they were concerned with was the beauty of the woman. And the pagan Arabs, they would marry for lineage. It's all about what tribe she comes from, and so on and so forth. And then when Allah Ta'ala favored the people with Islam, they began to give precedence to the religion. And once they began giving precedence to the religion, you saw the success of the Muslims. It was widespread. Victory after victory. Islam spread far and wide because they gave precedence to what? Deen. And so, the Shaykh mentions here though, that typically the women, they are married for four reasons. Either for their wealth, for her lineage, or for her beauty, or for her religion. He said, وَقَدْ جَعَلَ صلى الله عليه وسلم أمر الدين مقدم على غيره لاختيار زوجة. But the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, He made the affair of deen, of religion, to take precedence over all other affairs, and when it's come time to choose a wife. فَقَالَ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. So he said, let your hands be dusted, meaning put your hands in the dirt. Just don't even worry about nothing. Put your hands to your side and just chill out. Because you got a good wife, you got a religious wife, you're in a good position. دَلِيلٌ عَلَىٰ تُمَأْنِينَ لِاخْتِيَارِ ذَاتَ الدِّينِ. And this is an indication towards the tuma'nina, the contentment of heart you're going to have. You're going to be content once you find somebody who's religious. And the same thing goes for the women when it comes time for them to choose a husband. They should give precedence to religion, to deen. Now, كذلك في قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم الدنيا متاع وخير متاعها المرأة الصالحة. He said this dunya is nothing but pleasure. It's nothing but pleasure. He said, but the best of pleasure in this dunya is a righteous spouse. The best pleasure you're going to have is a righteous spouse. And in this, he says, is an indication towards the salah, towards uprightness, which is hoped for, and likewise husn tarbiyah, that good tarbiyah, that good upbringing and cultivation that you're going to find that a goodly spouse contributes to for your children. وجاء أن أبا الأسود الدؤلي قال لأبنائه مرة. It has come that Abu al-Aswad al-Du'li, rahimahullah, on one occasion said to his children, Ya bani, O my children, O my sons, قد أحسنت إليكم صغارا وكبارا وقبل أن تولدوا. He told his sons that, my sons, I have been good to you when you were small children, likewise when you were adults, and even before you were born, I was good to you. And so they said, well, كيف ذلك? What do you mean? How is this? قال, he said, التمست لكم من النساء الموضع الذي لا تعابون به. He said that I chose from the women, a woman who nobody will be considered ever blameworthy for choosing a woman like her, meaning their mother, meaning she was an excellent woman. And so I chose this excellent woman to marry and thus have my children with. So this is how I was good to you before you were even born. As some of the people now, they mention that this is amongst the rights that the children have upon us before they are even born. That you choose a righteous spouse. You choose the right person to have children with. Choose the right person to have children with. Now, he said, he intended their mother. And so he was diligent upon his wife being a righteous woman, حتى لا يعاب أحدهم بسببها, in order that none of the children could get shamed by who their mother was. Right? You remember how people used to play the dozens and talk about each other's mother, talk about the defects that each other's mother have. Sometimes they're just blatant lies, but sometimes it may be some stuff that kind of hurts because some of it may be true. Right? And that's the stuff used to cause fights. When it's true, as long as it's lies, it's all fun and games. But when you talk about something that my mother actually has within her, that's when fights start, right? So he chose for his wife a woman who, once she starts having children by him, his children would never be shamed by her. She's an excellent woman, a righteous woman, pious woman. Now, كما جاء الوصية للمرأة كذلك, likewise advice have come to the woman that she should choose صاحب الدين, a husband who has good deen, والأخلاق, and likewise he has good character, عند اختيارها للزوج, when she's looking for a husband. Don't just make his financial state to be the sole thing that you rest your decision making upon. Don't just make, is he handsome or not, to be the sole thing that you rest your decision upon. Some brothers, they have a lot of money, but they're in character, they're bankrupt. In character and deen, they're bankrupt. They're broke. Now, some of the men, they may be very handsome, but they treat the women harshly. Their handsomeness goes to their head, and thus they treat the women harsh, have no good manners. They're mean to them, and the likes of this. So don't make these things. And everybody likes something nice to look at, right? Everybody likes to be pleased with their spouse when they look at them. But don't let that be the sole thing that you rush your decision upon. Such that you may push past a brother who's, he's all right, but he has good deen. And you may go towards a brother who's drop dead gorgeous, but he's horrible in terms of his deen, and he mistreats you. Goes upside your head and doesn't take care of you financially, cheats on you and everything else. All right? So let that which is the crux of the affair, that which we hang our decision making upon, let it be deen first and foremost. And then if you find somebody who has good deen and they're attractive, alhamdulillah, it's a win-win. Like I won twice in my wife, mashallah. Okay, let that be the affair that you make your decision to be based upon. At any rate, next he mentions this narration from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiyallahu anhu, that he said, "Man arada an yatazawwaj imra'atan," whoever wants to marry a woman, فَلْيَنْظُرْ إِلَىٰ أَبِيهَا وَأَخِيهَا, then let him look at her father and look at her brother. He says, فَإِنَّهَا تَأْتِيهِ بِأَحَدِهِمَا, because she is going to bring to him something that she got from one of those two men. Right? If her father, he was a good man, he cultivated her upon Islam, taught her Islam, and so on and so forth, then she's going to take that characteristic that she got from her father or from her brother, and she's going to bring that into the household of her new husband. So look at them. I mean, look at her family, generally speaking. What type of family does she come from? Okay? Bima fihima min as-sifat, meaning she's going to bring to him that which, whatever types of characteristics that they have, she's going to bring that to the house of her husband. وَهَذَا مِن تَمَامِ الْحِرْصِ عَلَى أَبْنَائِهِ, and all of this goes back to what? You being diligent upon your children. What type of children you're going to have. He says, now, all of that is from the hirs and the diligence which one has in the cultivation and upbringing of his children. And يَنْظُرَ الزَّوْجُ حَتَّى فِي أَهْلِ الْمَرْأَةِ, that the husband, he looks even at the family of his wife. What type of family does she come from? How's her background? التي يريد نكاحها, the woman that he wants to marry. وقد تكون المرأة على خير ودين واستقامة في بيت لا استقامة فيه. He said, and perhaps it is the case that at times you may find a woman who is a woman of good religion. She's a woman of istiqamah and uprightness, a woman of khair, but she comes from a house in which none of these things were present. It does happen, right? So the Shaykh, he says that perhaps you may find this. وَلَا يَعْنِ ذَلِكَ أَلَّا يُرْغَبْ فِيهَا, but just because she comes from a household in which these things weren't present, it doesn't mean that as long as she has those characteristics, then you shouldn't desire her. Right? It doesn't mean that. He says, بَلْ قَدْ يَكُنْ فِي الزِّوَاجِ مِنْهَا إِعَانَةٌ لَهَا وَعَلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَ وَعَلَى قِيَامِ شَرْعِهِ. He said, rather, perhaps in you marrying her, it will be an aid for her. It will be an aid for her upon the obedience of Allah Ta'ala and upon the establishment of the Sharia. Right? They say that you should maximize your intention when you get married. You maximize your intention. So one, you want to have children and increase the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salam. You want to complete half of your religion if we accept the authenticity of the narration. Right? You want to safeguard your private parts and protect yourself. Likewise, you want to protect your sister or protect your Muslim brother. You want to protect your sister if you're a man that's looking to get married, or protect your Muslim brother if you're a sister that's looking to get married. Maximize your intention, you maximize your reward. You maximize your reward. Shaykh Uthaymeen, he mentions how marriage is better than supererogatory acts of worship. Getting married is better than supererogatory acts of worship. Supererogatory prayer, supererogatory fasting, and so on and so forth. Because the benefit of those supererogatory acts of worship is not going to go beyond the person performing them. You pray, okay, you get up, pray the night prayer, the night prayer benefits you as an individual. But you get married, it benefits you, benefits another Muslim, it benefits your children, it benefits the community, safeguards all these people, right? It has all these goodly results. So for that reason, Shaykh Uthaymeen said, it's better then supererogatory acts of worship. He said that, so this may be the case, that a woman or a man may have a background that's not the best of backgrounds. He didn't come from the best family. She didn't come from the best family. But that person in and of themselves is upright. That person in and of themselves is a good person. They're upon khayr, upon istiqamah, upon deen. He says, وَقَدْ يَتَبَادُرُ إِلَى ذِهْنِ مَنْ يَسْمَعُ بِهَذِهِ النُّصُوص وَهُوَ مُبْتَلَى بِزَوْجٍ أَوْ زَوْجَةٍ يَفْتَقِرَانِ إِلَى الصَّلَاحِ وَالْإِسْتِقَامَةِ. He said, and perhaps if a person hears the likes of these texts and how much importance that we should place upon good character, good deen, when we're trying to get married and so on and so forth. But a person may be tried and tested with somebody who doesn't have those characteristics, right? You may be tried and tested with a spouse who doesn't have any of these things in them. And so he says, so perhaps the person who's been tested with that may think that they have missed out on the actualization of these aforementioned benefits. So therefore, the solution is separation and divorce. If I'm supposed to seek all that, my spouse is nothing like that. My spouse is, doesn't have good character, doesn't have any of those qualities that have been mentioned. So therefore, what do I need to do? Divorce my spouse. A person may think this, the Shaykh is saying. Lakin, however, he says, La yalja ay shakhs aqil. He says, no individual who has intellect is going to rush to that. No person who has intellect is going to rush to that being, the ilaj and the treatment. Bal alayhi an yusaddid wa yuqarib. Rather, it is upon the person to strive hard and to come near as he can or as she can towards goodness. He says, فَلَعَلَّ اجْتِهَادُهُ فِي إِصْلَاحِ شَرِيكِ حَيَاتِهِ هُوَ بَابْ خَيْرٍ فَتَحَهُ اللَّهُ لَهُ. Perhaps a person striving hard and working hard for the rectification of their family and for the uprightness of their life partner will be a door to abundant goodness for you and for your spouse. You being patient, a man may have a wife who, like I say, doesn't come from the best upbringing. Perhaps she doesn't have these good characteristics and so on and so forth. Maybe she's a brand new Muslimah, embraced Islam just for you, and so you're not seeing all of those things that you may see within a woman who's more seasoned as it relates to her Islam, and you get disappointed, you get disgruntled. You have to have these arguments about religious matters with her all the time. So you say, you know what? She don't have none of that I'm supposed to marry for. Let me go ahead and leave her. Right? The Shaykh is saying, he says, be patient. Be patient in this affair. Right? And perhaps you being patient will be a door to good. You striving hard to rectify to the absolute best of your ability and to be upright and to teach and to cultivate. It can perhaps be a door to abundant good. وَعَلَى الْجَمِيعِ أَنْ يُبَذِّلْ الصَّادِقَ الْجُهْدِ وَالْحِمَّةِ فِي تَرْبِيَةِ الْأَبْنَاءِ. He said, but it is upon all parties involved that they have a truthful striving and they have high goals and high aspirations as it relates to the cultivation of the children, عَلَى وَفْقِ الشَّرْعِ وَالْحَجِّ النَّبَوِيِّ, upon the legislation and the guidance of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, he said, and there are examples, goodly examples that indicate how a woman, she strives, for example, to cultivate her children and to bring her children up in the best way, raise them properly. But the woman, this righteous and religious woman, she may have a husband who is mufarrid, he is negligent in certain regards. He's the one that's slacking. He says, for yansha al-abna, and even though her husband is the one that's slacking, the woman, she puts in all the work as it relates to raising the children and cultivating the children. And as a result of that, the children grow up with a righteous upbringing. And they grow up upon istiqamah. The children grow up upon the Quran. كما أن التاريخ مليء بأبناء الصالحين لم يكن آباؤهم على استقامة. As history is filled up with examples and stories about righteous men who they grew up but their fathers were not upon istiqamah. Yani some of their fathers may have been upon innovation and bid'ah. Their mothers were upon khair, upon goodness, and took care of them and sent them to sit with the ulama and brought them to the masjid and so on and so forth. Their fathers were not upon istiqamah. And so the goodly result was that the children were brought up upon that khair, upon that goodness. Bal lam yakunu ala deen. Rather, in some cases, their fathers weren't even Muslim. Their fathers weren't even Muslim. Some of us, our fathers weren't even, are not Muslim. Naam, guidance is in the hand of who? Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. He guides whomever He wills, by whatever means He wills. So there are a lot of examples of this. A righteous mother, father, not so much so, or may have even been a kafir. He says, such as Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl, who was the rat of the kuffar, the head of the kuffar, from the leaders of kufr in his time. Abu Jahl. His son was who? Who was his son? Sahabi Jalil. Who was his son? The son of Abu Jahl? Ikrimah. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahlin. Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl. Ikrimah was the noble companion of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. Fought many battles alongside the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. And he has manaqib, he has good traits and qualities. And he has great virtues. He says, لا شك أن صلاح رب البيت مؤثر في استقامة الأمة وصلاحها. He said, without doubt, the uprightness of the head of the household, the head of the household, who is the husband, the father. He says, without doubt, the uprightness and righteousness of the head of the household has an effect upon the uprightness of the ummah and upon their rectification. وَكَذَلِكَ صَلَاء الْأُمِّ. Likewise, the uprightness of the mother. And he says, فِي كَثِيرٍ مِّنَ الْأَحْيَانِ عَلَى الصَّلَاءِ الزَّوْجِ. The uprightness of the mother, in many instances, it will have a goodly effect upon her husband. A goodly effect upon her husband. Again, the husband may be a slacker, the wife isn't. And her uprightness, her righteousness rubs off on her husband. It rubs off on her husband. And has a good effect upon him. And he rectifies his affairs on the account of the woman. He said that, وَالْمُهِمْ فِي ذَلِكَ. What is important in all of this is that each individual strive hard to fulfill his obligation to Allah Ta'ala, being mindful of the fact that Allah Ta'ala is watching them and following the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi as-salatu wasalam. We'll mention one more right that the children have before they're even born, right? And there's a couple of more, but for the sake of time, we'll mention this last one. He mentioned al-hirsu ala ad-du'a hala mubashara, being diligent to make sure that you say the du'a before intimacy. To say the du'a before intimacy, okay? Who's supposed to say the du'a? Both parties, the man and the woman. The man and the woman, right? Both parties should say the du'a and learn it if you don't know it. Learn it if you don't know it, right? We mentioned to you before. We mentioned this in the class that we did some time ago about how often do we pray the Salatul Janazah, right? We pray Salatul Janazah, and you'll pray it more, of course, in the lands of the Muslims, but we pray Janazah prayer, once every couple of months, something like that, right? There's a du'a that you should say, but in the Janazah prayer, right? If you haven't learned it, you should learn it. But the Janazah prayer comes around once every couple of months, right? How often are you intimate? How often are you intimate? Depends. Yeah, it depends, right? Being boycotted. Inshallah, may Allah protect us from being boycotted. But quite often you're probably it's quite like you're intimate probably more than we pray the Janazah prayer, right? And we have no excuse. We have no excuse not to learn this dua. All right, you should know the dua, especially these supplications that we are in need of. Dua, coming to the masjid, like our brother Abu Nisa mentioned last weekend. And how often do we come to the masjid? There's a dua for going to the masjid. Dua for going en route to the masjid. Learn it. Right? Learn it. Say it. Dua for entering the masjid. Dua for exiting your home. Learn these adhkar that we are in need of every day. They are a means of protection for us. By the permission of Allah Ta'ala. Dua for intimacy. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam said in the narration of Ibn Abbas, لو أن أحدهم إذا أراد أن يأتي أهله, that if one of you, whenever he wants to come to his family, he says, Bismillah, Allahumma janibna shaytana wa janib shaytana ma razaqtana. He says, in the name of Allah, O Allah, keep shaitan away from us and keep shaitan away from what you provide us with. He said, if he was to say that, فإنه إن يقدر بينهما ولد في ذلك لم يضره شيطان أبدا. He says, if it were to be decreed, as an indication that what? Having children is by the decree of Allah Ta'ala. It's by the decree of Allah, not by your decree. Not by your decree. It's an indication that what? We should say it every time. Say it every time. And we asked some of the ulama a while ago, like, at what point in the intimacy is it said? Right? Is it said before the foreplay, before you enter the bedroom? Is it said, and when you know it's going down? Is it said before entrance? At what point is it said? Right? They say that al-bab wasi'. You can say it at any of those times. At any of those times, meaning you can say it when you know you have plans and you know this is highly likely it's going to happen. Before it even happens, you can say it before actual entrance. You can say it, before the, Can you say it in English? Allahu Alam. Allahu Alam. Allah knows best. Nah. So the bab is wasi'. You can say it at any of those times, inshallah. Maybe we can ask that question, inshallah ta'ala. Can it be said in English? Nah. He says, but if one were to say this, if Allah decrees that he were to give them a child from that act, then shaitan would never be able to harm that child. So right that your child has upon you that you say this, right? إلى جانب احتساب الزوج أجر طلب العفاف عند إتيانه لأهله كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says from another angle, the husband, he is seeking ifaf, he is seeking chastity, he is seeking to stave off that desire that he has in a permissible manner whenever he goes to his family. Just as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, في بضع أحدكم صدقة, in the private parts of one of you there's sadaqah. He's seeking ifaf for himself and for his spouse, to keep her chaste and to keep himself chaste. Right? He says in the private parts of one of you is charity. It's a charitable donation that she's giving you a donation, some sadaqah that you need. Right? فَقِيلَ لَهُ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, the companion said, O Messenger of Allah, when one of us fulfills his desire, will he receive a reward for that? He said, أَرَأَيْتُمْ لَا وَضَعَهَا فِي الْحَرَامِ, don't you see if he were to fulfill his desire in the haram, أَكَانَ عَلَيْهِ فِيهَا وَزَرْ, will there not be a sin against him for doing so? Then he said, of course. He said, فَكَذَلِكَ إِذَا وَضَعَهَا فِي الْحَلَالِ كَانَ لَهُ فِيهَا أَجْرٌ. Similarly, if he were to do that in the halal, there is a reward in that for him. Now, so we have all of these intentions when we do this, right? فإنه إن قدر الله عز وجل أن يكون لهما ولد وحرص على هذا الدعاء. He says, moreover, if Allah decrees that they have children from this act, what they have done, and they are diligent to say this dua, then in that lies a protection for the child from shaitan, and a protection for them from shaitan, pinching the child. Now, we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala, and pick up in the next lesson, finishing out the rights of the children before birth, and then go into the rights after the birth. Allah ta'ala knows best. As you mentioned, we're going to reschedule, inshallah ta'ala, with Ustad Hassan, and it will be a video class, and by that time we'll have the monitor up on the sister side, so that they can see everything that we see whenever we have one of these video classes, because we had one during the conference that we had with Shaykh Awal Anasi. Some of the ulama, they allow videoing, so whenever we have that opportunity, then when we utilize these devices in goodness, inshallah ta'ala. We did want to read this one thing. I forgot to read it before we end. showing the importance of being diligent to choose a person who has good deen, not just that they pray and things like that, but making sure they're upon kitab and sunnah, upon the way of the salaf. Right? You want your spouse to be Salafī. You want them to be a person of sunnah, not a person that's upon bid'ah and innovation. Right? And so we should make this a condition. Okay? How is the person's Salafiyah? Do they have good positions as it relates to any issues of aqeedah and manhaj and like this? Now, Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, he was asked this question, that a woman married a young man on the basis that he was upon the noble legislation and that he was Salafī. Then she discovered that he was an innovator. And the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam said, Kul bid'atin dolala wa kul dolalatin finnar, that every innovation is misguidance and every misguidance is in the hellfire. So is she to stay with him in spite of his deviation or leave him? What is your advice? It's not just an issue of character, not just the issue of, I see something from him sometime that I may dislike, which we're bound to see something from our spouse that displeases us from time to time, right? And in this case, we're commanded to do what? Look at the characteristics which they have, which please us. Nah? But this is something deeper than that. This is like a religious matter. There's problems with this person's deen. Problem with this person's deen, right? We got to understand that some things are deal breakers, right? Persons upon bid'ah. So, is she to stay with him in spite of his bid'ah or leave him? What is your advice? The Shaykh, he says, if the matter was in her hand, she could simply leave him, meaning just divorce him, right? However, the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّمَا الطَّلَاقُ بِيَدِ مَنْ أَخَذَ بِالسَّاقَ. The divorce is in the hands of the one who holds on to the leg, meaning the man. The divorce is in the hands of the man. He says, so it is upon her to get a khula from him if she wants to be free of him and his bid'ah. Now, so we see how serious this issue is, that we talk about a person's deen. These are deal breakers. A person having been upon bid'ah and stuff like that, these are deal breakers, right? The person, once you find out you're doing a sit down process, you find out the person is ikhwani, or the person reviles the ulama, and like this, right? Drop him like a hot potato. Now, we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala. We'll pick up next month, like we said. And once we know when we're going to reschedule with Ustad Hassan, we'll announce that, even if it's, in the next few days or next week or something like that, we'll just come together and do it again, inshallah ta'ala. Now. Fadda.
So, if the husband got a wife, right, that he find out that she an innovator, y'all have to be traveling from D.C. Just put out on 295?
No, we're not going to oppress anybody, right? We're not going to oppress anyone. But, this is a serious affair. You're talking about, you're going to have children with this person, everything like that, and then, you're going to have your child, with somebody who wants to be celebrating Mawlid in your home and stuff like that. They're going to be, trying to fly on rugs and stuff like that in your home, spinning around like a whirling dervish. Your wife is come home one day, she and there spinning around, But yeah, you're not going to oppress anyone. Our religion does not allow for oppression. However, I wouldn't advise for staying with somebody that's, that has serious issues like, in aqeedah and manhaj and things like this, No. Especially if they're not trying to take advice. Like if this is discovered, like if you married a person, like in this instance, wherein, which came into question, she married him on the premise that he was Salafī. Some people, they present themselves a certain way during the sit-down process, right? And then you marry the person, and then you find out after the fact, right? Okay, now you're in a marriage, right? It's no telling how long before you find this out about the person, right? If the person is willing to take advice and willing to rectify their affair, that's one thing, right? The person, they bucking on the advice, and I ain't trying to hear nothing, what you got to say, this is what I'm on, it's my family on, I'm going to continue to be on this, whatever case may be, and they're not taking any advice whatsoever, you got a big decision to make at that point. But if they're willing to take advice, and this is after you're already married to the person, if they're willing to take advice, then you're going to advise them. But if it's, you're still sitting with a person and stuff like this, and you find these things out about the person, no commitment has been made. Just go ahead and pass. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
The question just came in.